Hello, I'm Michelle Bailey from IDC. I'm a research fellow, and today in our session here at the One event, I'm going to be talking to you about our latest research that we've seen as a result of COVID and the economic downturn. And then I'm also going to be talking to you about all the changes we expected to see in the technology market as we move forward. So today I'm going to be showing you some of the latest survey data that we've collected. We do thousands of surveys with customers, your customers, and providers like yourselves on how you see the market changing, what you see coming forward, and then really thinking through what the impact has been from the COVID downturn as well as the economic downturn, and then thinking more broadly about what those changes are going to mean for your business going forward. So as you can see here, we're showing the 5 different phases of recovery that we expect to see from COVID. You can see that we've gone through this pretty substantial decline in the marketplace, and we're right at the bottom right now. And you can see this in some of the regional data that we've been collecting. You can see that on a worldwide basis, we're starting to bottom out in terms of the impact and the investments that we've seen so far into the market. And then you can start to see that we're going to start to climb out of this situation and move more towards a phase of recovery. What we definitely have seen is those businesses that were already further along on the digital journey have fared much better during this COVID downturn than we've seen in those businesses that really had not yet started on their digital journey or had more of an ad hoc approach to what they had been doing up until now. And the market is uneven. We see, obviously, tourism is down. We see hoteling is down. But we have seen some bright spots. Telemedicine, for example, the education market, and the technology sector. You know, we're in a little bit of a bubble here in the technology market where we've done pretty well throughout this downturn. But what we do expect to see as we move out of this phase and into the recovery phase is customers are going to continue with some of their longer term investments. And so let me show you how some of the things have changed before we were heading into the downturn, and then more as we're expecting the changes to come as we move out. So before COVID, what we saw is that customers were making a lot of investments. Cloud was clearly one of them. We saw a lot of investments still in mobile, in robotics. We saw a tremendous number of projects around data integration. Blockchain was an area where we saw a lot of investments. And then right as COVID hit, we saw dramatic changes in IT spending and new investments, changes we really don't typically see, as you can see here, on an overnight basis. So customers really quickly moved to governance and regulatory, making sure that they had the right security policies in place and the right governance procedures in place, particularly as their employees went remote and were working from home. We saw a lot of new data integration projects take off, and then we saw new investment in agile development. So this is one of these things that we were concerned about, that customers would shut down all of their R&D, shut down all of their new development work. In fact, we saw the opposite. We saw a lot of new development throughout the early part of COVID. So this is something that we really do think is going to be a short-term impact. We do expect customers to move back to their longer-term plans. And clearly, a lot of your customers were in a state of emergency where they had to bring their employees home. They had to think about new networking capabilities. They had to think about PCs again when they really hadn't had to think about PCs in a long time. So a lot of these new projects that we've seen over the last 6 months, again, were very much in response to this emergency situation. But we do expect the market to return to what have been some of these more longer-term investments, while, of course, making sure that all businesses are going to be in a position where they can think about employees working from home on a much longer-term basis. So one of the things that has come out of the COVID downturn, we're again concerned that customers would go into a retrenchment mode, that they would start working more with just the tools and the IT that they had on premises. But in fact, we saw the opposite. We actually saw customers move more towards public cloud capabilities than we had seen previously. So already there was a lot of new investment around public cloud, but we've seen even more of a shift to public cloud as a result of this downturn. And again, this is because we saw a lot of new companies having to bring new applications online. So new investments in collaboration tools, obviously new investments in networking capabilities. And the heart of all of that is bringing cloud to customer environments. And we've seen more investment there, not less investment. And this is really part of a longer term trend that we've seen around cloud. We had, of course, seen pretty rapid adoption of public cloud capabilities up until now, whether it's SaaS or IaaS or PaaS capabilities. But we'd also seen a lot of investment in customers' own private clouds in their own data centers. So about just under a third of all investments for customers today have been around private cloud capabilities, and roughly another 30% have been around public cloud. What is, of course, going away is everything that's non-cloud. So everything in a customer's environment that doesn't fit that cloud model, that doesn't help them move towards more of an agile capability, is something that we're seeing more disinvestment in. And so what this means is that over time, cloud becomes a much larger part of customers' environments as we move forward. And what we also know is that the portfolio itself is changing very dramatically, and we haven't seen any changes here so far. So for a lot of customers, they've got more applications installed in their IT portfolio than we've ever seen before. And this is driving a huge amount of complexity into their environment. So management complexity is rising actually very quickly. We've seen 55% in the typical application portfolio, meaning that over every 2 years, customers are basically doubling their portfolio. 47% of applications are expected to be built using modular development frameworks. So the shift from that more monolithic approach to building applications to a modular capability with containers and with microservices, that's really become the default for application development teams. And then 60% of resources are expected to be at a remote or at an edge data center. So what you start to see is not only does the portfolio become larger and larger over time, but different parts of applications and components of applications are actually moving to the edge and moving outside of customers' own data centers. And what this really means is that applications are going to become more, not less, interdependent over time. So with parts of applications living in different portions of customers' overall environment, the need for applications and data to be able to talk to each other across those different environments becomes more and more important over time. And this is where customers are really struggling with the management of what's becoming an increasingly complex IT portfolio. 53% of customers expect that application interdependencies are going to be complex over the next 2 years versus just 21% today. So already customers are expecting complexity to double over the next 2 years. And we already know that the typical application has roughly anywhere from 5 to 15 other applications that it depends on. So this is a very, very different portfolio moving forward than what customers have been using up until recently. Now, one of the things that we've seen has probably been the most important finding from our customer research over the last 2 years has been this. You know, typically when customers build applications, particularly over history, they've had a pretty much set and forget attitude that it gets put in place and it gets left there. We've seen the opposite with the broad adoption of cloud over time. And customers are moving applications and data at a higher rate between these different environments than we've really seen previously. Only 43% of applications are expected to stay in place over the next 2 years. And that's because customers are moving applications and data between their public cloud environments, from their public environments to private environments, from non-cloud environments to private environments. It really is a massive amount of churn that we're seeing in the portfolio. And so as a provider, being able to help customers with this interoperability becomes absolutely critical. And we've also seen that applications are following the data. It always used to be that the data was held closely to the application. We're starting to see the opposite, where customers are deploying applications so that they can be closer to data, particularly at the edge. So what this fundamentally means is that customers have to have new governance procedures in place. So new levels of automation are going to have to take over, because really being able to manage all of this on a manual basis just becomes very, very difficult for customers, and it becomes something that leads to a lot of inefficiencies in the IT department. And we know that IT workers would much rather spend their time on forward thinking and design than they are on break-fix issues and also ensuring compliance. So we expect to see a lot of new automation capabilities being built in at the management level. And one of the ways that we've seen customers deal with this complexity is to deploy new teams. So typically the team that would build cloud out in a customer's environment has been either the application team or the developer team or even the infrastructure team. And they've typically worked in a silo in a lot of customer environments that we work with. However, what we've started to see more is what's on the left-hand side of the screen, that the CTO office is taking over and putting in place a much longer-term plan for what cloud build-outs look like for an organization over the next 3 to 5 years, really thinking through a long-term strategy for what both design and execution looks like. And we've also seen the emergence of the new Cloud Center of Excellence teams. This is a team of professionals that typically is a mix of infrastructure operators, applications teams, security specialists. This new team is already having a really tremendous impact on the quality of design. And you can see that here on the chart where both the CTO team and that Cloud Center of Excellence team is already having a much, much better impact on overall quality of design, which ultimately leads customers to be making very different decisions about the types of providers that they're using. So my words of advice to you on this is that customers are making long-term plans for the providers that they're going to work with right now. So this is why it's important that you're in those customer environments, that you have specialists working in your customer accounts, and so that you're there while these decisions are being made. Something else that's been very important as part of our research over the last 18 months has been the shift to new management tools. And while management is often about lowering complexity, it's certainly about providing insight into how the entire IT environment is behaving and performance specifically now that more mainstream applications are moving to cloud. Things like availability and latency become really critically important. But what we're starting to see more of, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, is just how cost reduction is going to be really critically important going forward as well. So management tools are being implemented not just to drive better performance and improve latency and really ensure end-to-end capabilities, but it's also now being used as a tool where IT professionals can think through how much they're going to spend in which areas and what their cost management structure is going to look like going forward. And we know that this whole move towards IT asset management is going to be critically important for this new, very large, complex world that the IT operations teams are working through. So let me talk a little bit about how you can prepare for business recovery as part of this situation that we're in right now. So I talked earlier about how the first response for customers was to really put in place a lot of emergency projects. We saw a huge amount of IT investment at the outbreak of COVID. Again, collaboration tools, security tools, new networking capabilities, even hardware, PCs, mobile devices. And that was because businesses didn't really have any other choice. Their employees were working from home. They had to be able to bring together disparate parts of their business across the globe. We saw more spending in IT at the onset of COVID than we had estimated that we would see as part of overall spending. What customers did not spend a lot of time on was thinking through pricing, and you can see that on the chart on the left. But as we start to have customers think more about the next 9 to 12 months, what actually goes right to the top of their list of concerns is pricing. And what we do expect to see is a lot more pricing pressure in the market than we had seen previously. And what you also start to see is a lot of those projects start to slow down. So some of those new projects that were put in place very, very rapidly, that phase starts to slow down. And what that tells us is that customers are starting to think long term again. They're starting to think about, well, where can they get the best bang for their dollar, and what does ROI start to look like again as part of this cloud world that they're moving into. Secondly, what we see is security. And when customers think about cloud investments, they're not just thinking about cloud, they're thinking about the other 10 elements that you see here on the chart, with security being the main pull-through technology that comes with cloud. The more customers spend with cloud, the more they spend on security. And that's not just to protect their public cloud investments, it's also to protect their private cloud capabilities. And now that we have so many employees at the edge, security becomes even more important. What we're also seeing is a lot of still investment around data integration. Some of this is the precursor to AI and artificial intelligence, being able to bring data together that not only gives you a view into threats from a security perspective, but also starts to give customers insight into their own business and be able to make business decisions based on this data and the AI capabilities that we're seeing deployed into the market. We're also seeing a lot of investment around customer satisfaction systems. This is really important right now around COVID, trying to be able to really understand what's in the hearts and the minds of your customers and being able to change your business models so that you can think more clearly about what's important to your customers. We're seeing a lot of investment there. Mobile's still important. We talked about AI already. And then even technologies around business intelligence and transformation are important to customers as well. So the main takeaway from this is that it's not just about cloud. When customers invest in cloud, it's all these other technologies get pulled through with it. And then thirdly, is really injecting AI into the IT process itself. So while we've seen a lot of many disparate management tools being deployed into customers' environments as a result of cloud, what we've seen less of so far is intelligent automation around management. That's something that customers are still really trying to get their arms around and still just getting started with. And so this is something we expect to see a lot more investment in over time as well. And you can see that it's not just for implementation. It's not just about spinning up VMs. It's not just about spinning up containers. It's actually about being able to manage that environment on an ongoing basis. So being able to use intelligent automation in both implementation and as an ongoing tool for management. So this again is something that customers are looking at very carefully. And of course, there's no one vendor that can provide this today. So what it means is they're going to have to work with multiple vendors in order to be able to push this into their own environment. I actually think this is a huge opportunity for the partner community. I think this is something that you actually do have the expertise to be able to put in place and then turn around and sell that as a managed service to your customers. So I'm going to walk you through just 3 main takeaways that we've seen from our partner research. So this is survey work that we've done with partners like yourselves. First is we've seen just tremendous shifts in the business models of the partner community. So I think when customers used to think about partners, they would think about infrastructure players and they would think about software developers. You can see now as you work down that chart that a lot of the providers in this market are thinking much more about themselves as cloud specialists or security specialists, really thinking through about being a managed service provider or really thinking about offering a full IT portfolio to customers. So this is something that's ongoing. Only about 80% of all providers are going to stay with their current business model today. So about 20% of providers are still shifting their overall business models. Second is the role that we're seeing in just the very long tail of services that the partner community is selling right now. So again, it's not just about infrastructure, that traditional set of infrastructure that was being sold on the left. It's this long tail of security services and application services. It's thinking about professional services and consulting engagements. This has led to just a really very dramatic way in which partners are being able to come into customer accounts, think about having a much longer term relationship with their customers. And everything that's on the right-hand side of that slide, it's very sticky. That's how you develop really strong relationships with your clients and also how you become part of that much longer term thinking and that longer term investment that all of your customers are thinking about. And you can see that it's not just building it yourself. We've also seen a tremendous amount of resale happening, not just with cloud, but also around all the managed services in the IT sector. So being able to resell other services and then also partnering. So this is something I'm going to talk about on the next couple of slides, but how important it is that you can partner with each other and work with other partners where you may not be strong. So if your strength is in infrastructure or your strength is even in cloud, maybe there's another partner in your region or in your industry that is strong around things like security or data integration. And the two of you combined have a much stronger capability to go out to customers and deliver on much richer contracts that will play out over a much longer period of time. One of those is, of course, managed security. So I talked about security a lot in this. Managed security is now the #1 managed service that's driving revenue for partners. About 10% of all revenue across all of the partner community is now coming from managed security services. And you can also see networking capabilities. So we've seen networking become incredibly important again, as remote employees are working from home and also thinking about all of those applications that are living in different environments, how important it is that through that interoperability that there's high performance as part of that overall IT portfolio. And then again, performance monitoring and management, being able to ensure that customers have a full view into their public cloud environments, their private cloud environments, and even their non-cloud environments is incredibly critical for them now. And the automation around that is really what's going to drive efficiency into their IT portfolio. And then finally, partnering. So being able to partner with other providers in the market is going to be so essential. We know from our latest research that you have told us that one of your main areas of investment has been around technology itself, whether it's data centers, systems for yourself, your own investments in cloud capabilities, building out software capabilities for your own business. But number two that we've seen, and this again is very recent research, is partnering. And really what I talked about before, being able to work with like partners in your region or in your industry where the two of you bring together complementary strengths to have a much richer story as you reach out to your customers. And then the third is risk. And risk is really about thinking about monitoring or reporting capabilities. And again, this is something that you can provide back to your customers, and it reaches much further than just the NOC. If you have a network operations capability within your own environment, start thinking about a SOC and security operations centers, ticketing, of course. And a lot of it's really about helping your customers sort through all of that noise that they're getting, whether it's from security or whether it's performance capabilities, and really being able to hone in on what the true issue is in their environment. Customers would much rather buy that than have to build it themselves. So what does this mean for you? Well, we've already started to see what it means for you on a pricing perspective. We've seen prices with partners like yourselves, the managed service providers, increase pretty substantially over time. And we're continuing to see that trend now, even in the face of COVID and the economic downturn. We continue to see average prices with customers go up over time. And that's because you're able to sell them more services. So you're not just selling them infrastructure services, but you're able to lay on security services and application services, and particularly professional and consulting services as well. We see that as something that continues to be a growth area for the partner community and the provider community. And it's not even. We definitely see more of this from the managed services providers, but particularly also those consultants and those professional services organizations. So as I wrap this up, I'm going to leave you with three things to think about. One is you really do have to dig in and understand cloud dynamics. So I talked to you before about cloud is not just about moving to public cloud. Cloud is about really helping your customers drive an interoperated environment across public, private, and non-cloud environments. That's what everybody is looking for. And customers plan to use more vendors over time, not fewer vendors over time. So we don't expect to see this massive consolidation of vendors as we've seen in other downturns. What we actually expect is that customers will use more vendors as they move through this period because they're going to need more help around areas that they don't have expertise around and that you probably can't necessarily always offer yourself. So this idea that you have to be the full service IT environment, I think is something that you really should look to other partners to be able to bring that capability in as part of at least your sales and marketing engagement. The other thing customers are looking for is they want that friction-free vendor. Those vendors that tend to have some kind of stake in the game. They want to try and steer customers only towards their own solution. That is not something that we see is done very well in the market. Customers are looking for vendors that will help them get to their end state, which is that large interoperable environment, not necessarily pushing them into one silo or another. And then complexity. Complexity is very hard for your customers, which means that it's a massive opportunity for all of you. And that pull through that I was showing you before, where if you sell $1 of cloud to a customer, that might mean 20 or 30 cents in security. It might mean another 10 cents in data management capability. That's how you're going to build your portfolio over time and think about those much higher value contracts as well and driving up ARPU. And then from a value-added services perspective, clearly cybersecurity is number one. That's where a lot of the focus is for customers, and it has become more important throughout COVID. Professional services as well, I talked about that, helping your customers think through that longer-term vision for their environment and being able to put in place and execute on that longer-term strategy. Customers are very much investing in those higher touch services. This idea that cloud is low touch is a complete myth. Customers are actually looking for those higher touch relationships. And again, the more tools that you can create for customers that help them get access to that integrated portfolio and drive more automation into that portfolio is something that they're going to be very interested in hearing about from you. And you don't have to build all of that. Again, that's something that you can partner for. And then finally, I would just say what's really important in this market is people and partnerships. So as much as COVID has been about pushing people away from each other, having those personal relationships is now more important than ever. And if you have your people in customer environments, or if you have them working remotely, maintaining those customer environments and then also communicating amongst yourselves about what's important within those specific customer accounts actually becomes more important over time, because what we have seen is some customers are making isolated decisions and they're not necessarily reaching out. If you have people in those accounts that have those tighter relationships, they will be getting early insight into what some of those changes are. And then I would suggest that you get in front of this. So if you've been a little bit on your heels when it comes to cloud or when it comes to digital transformation projects, why don't you sit down and figure out a playbook that you can use for your sales team to go out to your customers and actually suggest this transformation for them? And you'll be amazed at the different type of conversation that will drive with your customers. And then finally, expertise does still count in this market just because of a lot of the complexities that we're seeing. Technical experts are critical. So I know for a lot of you, this has been about reshaping your sales teams and your marketing teams, but those technical experts that you have on staff really are why your customers are coming to you. So that also continues to be critically important. So with that, I hope you found this helpful. You can reach out to me. I've got my email here. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And I look forward to seeing you all soon, I hope. And hopefully you've had a lot of success thinking through the one event today. Thank you.